like starting your day with a warm sip of tea. Let's ease into this video with calm and an open heart. Ever seen a kid blurt out the truth in public when it embarrasses the grown-ups? Would you teach that child to apologize or to stand by what's right? Today's story might make you rethink how we raise kids in a world quick to judge. Settle in, this one's got layers. Rachel, 37, was no stranger to doing things her own way. A single mom living in a quiet Missouri suburb, she raised her son, Ethan, 12, in a modest ranch-style house filled with second-hand furniture and a lot of love. Their life wasn't flash. Rachel worked as a nurse, juggling long shifts to keep the bills paid, but it was theirs. The cul-de-sac they called home was classic middle America: kids on bikes, neighbors who waved but gossiped, and the occasional block party where everyone pretended to get along. Rachel and Ethan, though, were a team, navigating the world with a bond forged through late-night talks and shared battles. Ethan was a force of nature. At 12, he was whip-smart, with a sharp tongue and a moral compass that didn't waver. He had a knack for spotting nonsense and calling it out, whether it was a classmate cheating on a math quiz or a teacher unfairly singling someone out. Rachel often joked that Ethan was born with a built-in lie detector. But he wasn't just bold, was fair. If he messed up, he owned it. He'd apologize to friends for snapping during a bad day, and even to his science teacher for arguing too heatedly about a grade. "If I'm wrong, I'll say it," he'd shrug, and Rachel would beam, proud of the kid who valued truth over ego. Rachel raised Ethan to think for himself, not to blindly follow rules or please adults just because they were older. She didn't want a cookie-cutter good boy who nodded along to fit in. Instead, she encouraged his questions, his debates, even when they left her exhausted. "He's not perfect," she'd tell friends, "but he's honest, and that's worth more than perfect." Her parenting style wasn't for everyone. Some neighbors thought Ethan was too outspoken, whispering that Rachel should rein him in. But Rachel saw his fire as a gift, a sign he'd grow up to be a man who'd stand up for what was right, no matter who he was up against. "Look, I know not every parent would agree with how I'm raising Ethan. Some want kids who stay quiet, follow the script, and don't rock the boat. And I get it, keeping the peace is easier. But I believe kids like Ethan, who speak their mind and stand by their values, are the ones who'll make the world better." That day at Walmart, though, Ethan did something that left me floored proud, a little shocked, and honestly, emotional. It was one of those moments that makes you question everything you thought you knew about parenting in a world that's quick to judge. It all started on a Saturday afternoon, the kind where you're just trying to get through your grocery list without losing your mind. Ethan and I were at our local Walmart, weaving through crowded aisles, when something happened that would turn a routine errand into a moment we'd never forget. Ethan, true to form, saw something he couldn't let slide, and what he did next wasn't just about him. It was about truth, courage, and the kind of lesson no parenting book can teach. It was a typical Saturday afternoon in Missouri, the kind where the air feels sticky and the Walmart parking lot is a maze of minivans. Rachel, 37, and Ethan, 12, were on a mission: groceries for the weekend. For Ethan, a long-awaited prize. He'd been squirreling away his allowance for months, and today was the day he'd finally buy Starfield, the sci-fi game he'd been buzzing about for weeks. Ethan was practically bouncing as they pushed their cart through the aisles, tossing in cereal and bananas while chattering about space battles and alien planets. Rachel couldn't help but smile. Her kid's excitement was contagious, a bright spot in the grind of errands. They made it to the checkout line, cart loaded, Ethan clutching his $60 in crumpled bills like a trophy. The store was packed, the hum of scanners and chatter filling the air. Ahead of them in line was a young woman, Maya, 22, balancing a basket of essentials: milk, bread, a few frozen dinners. She wore a short sundress, bright yellow and summery, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Rachel noticed her because she seemed tired, maybe a little frazzled, the way you get after a long shift. Behind Rachel and Ethan stood older women, Barbara and Doris, both in their late 60s, dressed in sensible slacks and carrying oversized purses. They were regulars at Rachel's neighborhood, known for their church bake sales and sharp tongues. As Maya handed her items to the cashier, Barbara and Doris started, whispering loudly. "Look at that dress," Barbara muttered, her voice carrying over the beep of the scanner. "Barely covers anything. Girls like that have no shame." Doris chimed in, not even trying to be discreet. "Probably out chasing trouble. You know the type, bad news." Their words weren't just gossip. They were meant to be heard, a public shaming dressed up as moral superiority. Maya's shoulders tensed, her cheeks flushing as she fumbled with her wallet. She didn't turn around, but her discomfort was palpable, like she was shrinking under their gaze. Rachel felt her blood heat up. She'd been in Maya's shoes before, judged for her clothes, her choices, her existence as single mom. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, Ethan stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. "They sell mind your own business on the same aisle, the Bibles. You know," he said, loud enough for the whole line to hear. His tone wasn't angry, just matter of fact, like he was stating the weather. The checkout line froze. The cashier paused mid-scan, a box of cereal hovering in her hand. Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Barbara and Doris turned red, their mouths opening and closing like fish out of water. For a split second, Rachel was as stunned as everyone else. Her 12-year-old had just dropped a truth bomb in the middle of Walmart. Then pride surged through her. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, unfazed by the stares, his brown eyes locked on the two women. Barbara recovered first, her voice sharp. "You need to teach your son some manners," she snapped, pointing a manicured finger at Rachel. Doris nodded vigorously. "Disrespectful little brat. Talking to his elders like that." The other shoppers shifted, some whispering, others craning their necks to watch the drama unfold. Rachel could feel the weight of their judgment, the unspoken expectation that she'd scold Ethan, make him apologize, restore the proper order of things. But Rachel wasn't having it. She put a hand on Ethan's shoulder, her voice calm but firm. "I think he's absolutely right," she said, meeting Barbara's glare head-on. "You don't get to talk about people like that and expect respect in return. Maybe you should think about that next time." Ethan glanced up at her, a flicker of relief in his eyes. The cashier, barely hiding a smirk, resumed scanning Maya's items. Maya, still flushed but standing taller, finished paying and turned to Ethan. "Thanks," she said softly, her smile small but genuine. Then she grabbed her bags and slipped out of the store. Barbara and Doris huffed, muttering about today's youth and terrible parenting, but they didn't push further. The line moved on, the moment fading into the buzz of the store. Rachel and Ethan checked out, Ethan's game tucked proudly under his arm. As they wheeled their cart toward the parking lot, the adrenaline of the encounter settled into a quieter emotion. Ethan, usually so confident, looked up at Rachel with a hint of uncertainty. "Mom, was I too rude?" he asked, his voice softer now, the weight of the moment catching up to him. Rachel stopped by their beat-up sedan, crouching to meet his eyes. "No, Bud, you weren't rude. You were brave," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saw someone being picked on, and you stood up for her. That's not easy, especially when it's grown-ups doing the picking. I'm proud of you." Ethan's face relaxed, a small smile breaking through. "Okay," he said, then added, "I just didn't like how they made her feel." Rachel pulled him into a quick hug, her heart swelling. Her kid wasn't just smart, was kind, and that was worth more than any apology to keep the peace. As they drove home, the Walmart incident lingered in Rachel's mind. She knew not everyone would see it her way. Some would say Ethan was out of line, that kids should stay quiet, that she should have made him apologize to avoid a scene. But Rachel saw something else, a boy who refused to let cruelty slide, even if it meant standing alone. The world needed more of that, not less. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was bigger than a Saturday errand. It was a glimpse of who Ethan was becoming, and a challenge to her own beliefs about raising him in a world that often punished honesty. Back home from Walmart, Rachel was still riding the high of Ethan's courage when she called her ex-husband, Mark, to share the story. Mark, 40, a high school coach with a traditional streak, had always leaned on clear-cut rules. Kids respect adults, period. Rachel braced herself, knowing he might not see the Walmart incident the way she did. Over the phone, she recounted how Ethan stood up for Maya, shutting down Barbara and Doris's cruel gossip with a sharp but fair comeback. He didn't just let it slide. "Mark," Rachel said, her voice bright with pride. He spoke up when it mattered. Mark's response was ice cold. "You're telling me our son sassed two old ladies in public, and you're proud?" He snapped. "That's not standing up, that's being a disrespectful little punk. You're letting him run wild. Rachel, you don't know how to raise a kid." His words hit like a slap, echoing the same judgment she'd felt from the Walmart crowd. Mark insisted Ethan should have stayed quiet, apologized, and shown respect to his elders. "Right or wrong, you're teaching him to be mouthy, and it's gonna bite him later," he warned. Rachel's temper flared, but she kept her voice steady. "Respect isn't blind obedience, Mark," she countered. "Those women were bullying a young girl who couldn't fight back. Ethan saw an injustice and called it out. That's not disrespect, it's integrity. Should he have stayed silent just because they're older? Would you want someone to stay silent if it was our kid being shamed?" Mark scoffed, unmoved. "He's 12. His job is to listen, not lecture. You're making excuses for bad behavior." The call ended with Mark muttering about fixing this next time Ethan was at his place. Unbeknownst to Rachel, Ethan had overheard part of the argument from the living room. As she hung up, he appeared in the kitchen, his face clouded with doubt. "Mom, am I a bad kid for speaking up?" he asked, his voice small. The question broke Rachel's heart. She knelt in front of him, pulling him into a hug. "No, Ethan," she said, her voice fierce with love. "You're not bad. You're someone who stands for what's right, even when it's hard. That's the thing I'm most proud of. Don't let any own your dad, those ladies, anyone make you feel otherwise." Later that night, as Ethan slept, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, replaying the day. Mark's words stung, but they also sharpened her resolve. She'd raised Ethan to be kind, not completely care about people, not appearances. The Walmart moment wasn't just a kid talking back. It was a kid defending someone's dignity. Yet she knew the world wouldn't always see it that way. Parents like Mark, neighbors like Barbara and Doris, they'd rather kids stay quiet than challenge the status quo. But Rachel believed in a different kind of parenting, one that equipped kids to face a world that wasn't always fair. "Here's my message to you. We tell our kids to be good. But what does that mean when goodness requires speaking out? When kindness means standing against cruelty, even if it's an adult doing the hurting? If your child calls out an injustice, will you stand by them, even if it ruffles feathers?" Ethan's story isn't just about one moment in a store, it's about the courage to do what's right, no matter who's watching. I want to hear what you think, because sometimes bravery isn't about age, it's about heart.